What is up, everybody? Today we are covering the tight end position. We are going to get things started today with the questions that I asked you guys to give me. We do have a couple questions we're going to get to. Remember, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and if you have anything you want to add, if you're a fantasy footballer, you have some advice that you want to give me or my listeners, put it in the comments section, or if you just have a random fantasy question, get that in and I will discuss it in the next video. So we do have two questions today we're going to get to, both of them from Stephen Poor, who says, first of all, do you think Russell Gage from Atlanta can be a sleeper this year? He'll be third on the depth chart behind Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley in that high-powered offense, but he came on strong towards the end of last year. Do you think he can carry that momentum that he had last year to this year? Thank you for the question, Steven. I think that Russell Gage, unless you are in a extended draft where you may be going 18 to 20 rounds, I don't think you take him just because the receiver class is so deep. I would take a Steve Sims from Washington before I would take Russell Gage. I would probably take a lot of the other number threes from other teams, Chase Claypool, Denzel Mims, some of the rookies, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I would take all those guys before Russell Gage, but if you're in an extended draft and you can take a risk, definitely go for it. He did have a few nice games towards the end of last year. I think that I don't think he's going to have a very big target share because Hayden Hurst is going to get a lot of targets, and of course Julio and Ridley are going to get their targets as well. Plus, we can't discount Todd Gurley catching balls out of the backfield. So to that one, I would say unless you're in an extended draft, Steven, I would say do not draft Russell Gage. And then the other question that he brought in was, I cannot remember, but I don't think you mentioned Tyler Boyd or A.J. Green from the Bengals. What kind of fantasy outlook do you think they will have with rookie Joe Burrow throwing them the ball? Now, that is a really difficult question because if you look at the Bengals' offense, you have A.J. Green on one side who's coming back from an injury, who I think has the highest upside of any receiver on the Bengals roster. But Tyler Boyd is probably the safest option. If you want someone in the middle rounds, you already have a solidified number one wide receiver on your team, and you can kind of get a wide receiver 2/flex receiver. I think Tyler Boyd can be that for you. He can probably be a good wide receiver 2 for you. I don't think he can be a wide receiver 1. Just because the amount of weapons they have around him, the offensive line should be better. The Bengals' offense will be good this year. I'm just not sure about the defense. Joe Mixon can catch passes out of the backfield. I hope they use him in that sense more often this year. But don't forget T. Higgins, who they drafted in the second round at the start of this year. Plus, they also had John Ross, who last year in Zach Taylor's system, he actually played really, really well before he got injured again. So if he can stay healthy, you have to remember him out of the slot. So the Bengals have 4 receivers that any given week can probably get you a 20-point game. But I don't think any of them outside of maybe Tyler Boyd will be a consistent 10 every single week. I think out of Boyd you'll get some more consistency. Out of the others, you have to decide if you think AJ Green can stay healthy. Give him a shot. He has probably the highest upside, maybe being a low end wide receiver 1, even though he is getting older. But you're getting him in like the 8th, 9th round, at least in the drafts that I'm seeing. The mock drafts I've been, he's going in like 8th, 9th, even 10th round. So if you can get him there, if you're willing to take that risk, definitely. The upside definitely makes it worth it. But I wouldn't draft T. Higgins. If I were to draft someone, I'd probably draft John Ross later on. I think he could be a serious sleeper. But I wouldn't trust either of them as a wide receiver 1. You need to have another receiver or 2 other breakout receiving threats on your team. So you don't trust them as your primary options, but if you can afford to take a risk with Green, go for it. If you want just someone that can be safe and can be a consistent flex star or wide receiver 2 every week, go for Tyler Boyd, and I think that's what I'll give you. So thank you for those questions. Keep the questions coming. Any of you out there, I want to hear from you. I guarantee you I will get to them in the next video. So be sure to use that comment section. I hope to see it lighting up after this video. So like I said, today we're going to get into the tight ends. And at the top, most people's number 1 is Travis Kelce. I actually have a tie there kind of with George Kittle. It's kind of more of a 1A, 1B. I just like Kittle's ability to block. That always attracts me as at tight ends. I know that doesn't help in fantasy, but I do think that George Kittle just the speed and just the drive that he has, the energy he brings to that team, and the target share. Patrick Mahomes is going to spread the ball around, but we know Tyreek Hill's there. They have a gazillion other receivers that could have a 100-yard game every week. So Kelce, I think he still has the target share that you want, but I think if you're looking just on targets, I think Kittle is going to get you more, honestly. The thing you do have to watch out with Kittle is he going to hold out for a new contract? So that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on as a fantasy owner. If you have an early draft, you may want to take Kelce first just because he's safer. But if Kittle gets a new contract or he says, hey, I'm not holding out over it, I honestly think you should consider taking George Kittle as the top tight end. Just something to think about. After that, I think there is a drop-off, but then you get into the Zach Ertz's and Mark Andrews. I actually have Mark Andrews ahead of Zach Ertz. I'm not sure what Ertz's role is going to be because Dallas Goedert continues to improve every year. And Philly brought in a lot of receivers through the draft. Deshaun Jackson's coming back, hopefully healthy. They still have Alshon Jeffrey as far as I know. I haven't heard otherwise. Maybe he got released. If he did get released, someone tell me in the comments section. He's not probably going to be very relevant in fantasy anyways. So I haven't really paid any attention to Alshon Jeffrey. But I still have some questions about Zach Ertz. How much is he going to do? How much is he going to impact the red zone offense? Whereas with Mark Andrews, the Ravens just traded away Hayden Hurst because the thing you worried about Mark Andrews before was, they have Hayden Hurst, they have Nick Boyle, how much is he really going to see the field? And he still produced, not even being on the field all that often. This year he probably will be on the field more. Though one thing you have to worry about with big tight ends like Andrews is the injury concerns with the foot. We've seen bigger tight ends before have some nagging foot injuries. He did have a foot injury at the end of last year. So it's just something to monitor, but he is my tight end 3. If he stays healthy, I could easily see him being tight end 2 or even tight end 1 at the end of the year. That said, I think there's actually some solid depth this year at the tight end position. You can find some sleepers later on. So if you feel confident and you have extra space to maybe keep 2 or 3 tight ends, I would probably pass on the tight ends early on, including Andrews. Whereas if you draft Andrews, that's probably the only tight end you need. But that's the point where if you haven't drafted a receiver yet, you may want to grab one in that 4th, 5th, 6th round. You want to get your receivers right there probably, maybe a round later. But that means if you get a tight end here, that probably means you can't take a quarterback in this year. You can't early on, and your running backs aren't going to be as good. I'm seeing Andrews going off in the 3rd and 4th round in some drafts. If he's there in the 5th, I'll tell you in my fantasy leagues, if he's there in the 5th round and into the 6th, I might consider it. Just because the upside in the 6th, I definitely would consider. I probably would take him if he's there in the 6th. But other than that, I'm just probably going to trust myself finding some late round sleepers. After that, another drop-off. This is the part where it gets a little bit shaky. You have some injury concerns with Evan Engram, who could be a really big part of the offense. He seemed to click with Daniel Jones, but every year he's always injured, and it drives fantasy owners crazy because the tight end position is generally thin. And if you look at it on paper this year, it is again. But like I said, I'm going to give you some sleepers in a few minutes that I think could help you possibly win your league. Last year, I was right on Mark Andrews, I will let you know. I took him in the 16th round in almost all of my leagues. And he was a gold mine for me for almost the entire year. So I'm interested to see who's going to break out this year at the tight end position. Maybe not quite to the extent of Andrews, but I do think there are a few names I'll get to in a few minutes, so hang tight. I will get to those. But moving on in order on most people's consensus rankings, Darren Waller is a guy I'm not super high on just because their number 2 tight end, Foster Moreau, I loved coming out of LSU last year. He can block, he can catch, he has good speed, good hands, runs decent routes. I was praying the Steelers would draft him. We didn't. He would have come in handy last year with Vance McDonald's injuries. I think that Moreau could be, 3 years from now, could be a top 10 tight end in the league. I really do. But this year, still, I think Darren Waller will still have a big role. But don't forget, they still have Tyrell Williams, who's going under the radar in a lot of fantasy leagues. I forgot to mention him on the wide receiver video. But if you can get him in the later rounds, he was a touchdown machine before he got injured last year. I know they have Henry Ruggs this year. He's another guy we didn't really touch on in the receiver video. And they have other weapons. They have Hunter Renfrow. We'll see what happens with Lynn Bowden. He's apparently in trouble for something now. And they brought Bryan Edwards as well. I'm not big on Bryan Edwards. But even Tyrell Williams is a guy you can take. But I still think Darren Waller is going to help you in the red zone. Kind of that big receiver tight end. You can put him out in the slot. So I think he's still going to produce, but wait until round 7. He's not going to be... I don't think he's going to be quite to the extent he was last year as, he's tight end 2 for a lot of the year. He was tearing it up. I don't think he's quite to that extent. So hold off on Waller until maybe round 7. If you feel like you need to get tight ends are going off the board, maybe that will be decent value in your league. Again, you don't want to be stuck with having no tight ends. So it's either you have to draft quantity or quality. And Waller, he's kind of in the middle. You have to decide, is he quality or is he just one of those mad guys in the middle? So keep an eye on the Raiders offense. Tyler Higbee is a name that has shot up draft boards. When I first saw the first rankings, I think I looked at some CBS Sports rankings, Dave Richard and Jamie Eisenberg's rankings. I was shocked to see them. I mean, Higbee was like their number 4 or 5 tight end. I think he's like their number 5 or 6 tight end. I was surprised. But then I was reading more, that they're running more 12 personnel this year. Higbee's going to be a bigger part of the offense now that they really only have 2 solid receivers. I mean, they have Josh Reynolds there, but Kupp and Woods are really the only guys that are going to require a target share. So they're going to be using a lot of their tight ends, Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee. I'm not as high on him as most of the experts are, but if you can get him in the 9th, 10th round range on NFL.com, he's going even later than that right now. So watch the rankings, see how they change between now and whenever your draft is. I generally have some early drafts. They all got pushed back this year. I'm not exactly sure for what reasons, but they did get pushed back. And if you can get him, like I said, 10th round's probably solid. I'm not on Gerald Everett. I'm not on him this year. I think Everett is probably the more talented tight end, to be honest with you, and a lot of people would disagree with that. But he does have good blocking skills, good hands, decent speed. So I think Gerald Everett's the better overall tight end, but Higbee's a better fit for Sean McVay's offense. So in the middle rounds, if you haven't drafted a receiver or tight end then, you may want to consider Higbee, but don't overdraft. Noah Fant, I'm hesitant on. I love Noah Fant coming into last year. I was taking him later, just like I was Mark Andrews, and he came on at the end of the year when Drew Lock became the starting quarterback. But remember, last year, the only other person who was really who was getting a lot of looks from Drew Lock or the quarterbacks before him and Flacco, was Cortland Sutton. This year, they have Jerry Jeudy, they have KJ Hamler, and I know those guys probably aren't going to do a ton in the red zone. You never know, but they probably won't. So they have more receivers this year, but don't leave out the tight end they got in the 4th round, Albert Okwuegbunam, who was Drew Lock's teammate at Missouri. So they already have a rapport there. So I'm a little bit hesitant on Fant because I don't know if he can be at the level he was at the end of last year. Just because I think Albert Okwuegbunam's going to have a part in the offense, plus his targets are going to go down because they have more receivers. So monitor and see how much of a part Albert Okwuegbunam has in the offense. But for Noah Fant, I've seen him going in 8th, 9th round. That's too high for me. Maybe 11th, 12th, maybe 13th round is a little bit more comforting for me to take a guy like Noah Fant. To go through a few quick names here, Dallas Goedert, we mentioned. If he was on any other team, he may be a top 10 fantasy tight end, top 5 maybe. But in Philadelphia, Zach Ertz is there. If you want to kind of handcuff a tight end, it sounds kind of weird, but if you could end up having a top 5 tight end, Dallas Goedert, if something were to happen to Ertz. Austin Hooper, they have Harrison Bryant. They drafted Harrison Bryant, a tight end, the Browns did. Plus, they still have David Njoku there, so they're going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets. And they did make Austin Hooper the highest paid tight end, so they plan to use him a lot. But David Njoku looked really good with Baker Mayfield a couple years ago, so 10th round, again, one of those 10th round guys. If you don't draft one early, maybe take one then. But I'm not super high on Austin Hooper just because there's a lot of competition in the room. Then we're getting to other guys that I'm saying do not draft. These are guys, avoid at all costs. Jimmy Graham or any of the Bears tight ends. I loved Cole Kmet, the guy they drafted, but stay away from him. Not a huge fan of his in the Bears offense. Nick Foles at quarterback and Kmet, he really just isn't ready. And Jimmy Graham, I didn't like the signing to start off with. He doesn't have much left in the tank. I'm saying avoid O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate. If any tight end produces, it's going to be Gronk. He's a guy that I would probably consider taking over Austin Hooper just because he and Brady have such a good relationship. But I don't know how much he's going to do outside of the red zone. He didn't have much left in the tank a couple years ago. He's not going to be getting any. He didn't get any younger. So I would say don't expect too much from Rob Gronkowski. But if he can get you some touchdowns, he could help you if your top tight end is on a bye week or something. Another guy to avoid, Blake Jarwin from the Cowboys. They have too many receivers. Avoid him. Avoid the Vikings tight ends, Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith. If you draft anyone, I'd say draft Irv Smith. That maybe they expect him to have a bigger role now that Stephon Diggs is gone. Vance McDonald, avoid him. I'm a Steelers fan, but avoid Vance McDonald. He's too injury prone. Eric Ebron is there. If you draft a Steelers tight end, draft Eric Ebron. Not a huge fan of his either. But also, I would probably recommend avoiding Greg Olsen. And Tyler Eifert is a guy to keep an eye on just because there is a lack of elite weapons in Jacksonville. But I'd probably still say stay away. I think D.D. Westbrook will get a lot of targets along with DJ Shark. But I'm going to finish this off today with 5 quick sleepers. If you have any sleepers you want to mention them in the comments section. We'll discuss it in the next video when we discuss probably the kickers. The kickers are next in order, so that'll be an interesting video. Mike Gesicki. The guy is a freak. We saw some videos of him. He is really athletic. He seems to be in really good shape. Really came on towards the end of last year, so keep an eye on him. And then a couple other guys. Trey Burton. We mentioned Philip Rivers likes to throw to the tight ends. T.J. Hockenson, if he can stay healthy, is a guy to keep an eye on. And then to finish it off with Jonnu Smith, who looked really good last year. We'll see if the Titans throw the ball a lot. And then Christopher Herndon from the Jets. I hear that they really want to get him involved in the offense. He's super talented. He looked good with Sam Darnold a couple years ago. But Ryan Griffin is there as well. But those are 5 guys to keep an eye on. If you want to take one of them later on in the draft, at the end of your draft, may not be bad value. See who falls at the end of the draft. Take a chance. Maybe he'll be this year's Mark Andrews. That's all for today. Remember, like, share, subscribe, get the word out so we can get more viewers. And until next time, we will see you later. And don't forget to use that comment section. I want to hear from you, and I'll answer your questions or comments in the next video.